yeah. Ready? Ready, willing, and able to defend the cause. I think that's Petra.
It felt like Petra.
I'm pretty sure there's a thing.
Yeah. If I
Ready,
close my eyes, I could just imagine you with
willing,
that,
and
like the long
able.
hair,
Yeah,
the
in my
skin tight
dreams too.
clothes.
In
Yeah.
my dreams too. Every once in a while, I'll catch these videos of like the guys that'll put like that glue on their head and like they glue that toupee on, and
Mm,
it looks quite real. So
mm.
maybe eventually I'll find some roadkill, get some
Get some
super
fresh
glue.
hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would be great is
with a
like
white
what
line right down the middle because it's skunk or antlers. Find it. I'm gonna find a deer.
you don't do the whole head, Derek. You don't do the whole head, but
I
it
might
would
though.
be.
Well, I'll do the top, but it'll have antlers on it, and I'll be like, "Hey, I'm that." What was that?
You're that guy.
Netflix Sweet Tooth. There's a show
Oh,
on
I never
Netflix
saw that
about
one. Yeah.
they're like the new. There's a bunch of kids that are born and they all have like animal traits. They're like little
Okay.
mutants and follows
Yeah.
this one guy, one little kid with antlers, and it's kind of it's a very. I haven't seen all of it. I kind of watched too much of it and then I stopped
Okay.
because like a good thing, even with ice cream or
Mm.
candy, you eat too much and you kind of get sick of it.
Yeah.
I
No.
I did that and then I had to stop and I won't go. No, no. Anyway, I'm going to leave
Yeah.
that in.
They.
That is our
Yeah.
introduction.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave in the Petra and welcome all.
Please.
Um,
Please do.
welcome all. I hope you enjoyed that introduction. I hope you remember Petra and the awesomeness that it brought. Unseen Power was the album that was in. It had like a windmill, or not a windmill, but a wind turbine on it. Unseen Power. That's the one. I remember it because it was the Christian music, but sounded secular. So I was unashamed to listen to it in public, or tell my friends about it because it was
Yeah.
rocking.
You,
Rocking.
you didn't you
Is that
didn't
the
have to
Devil's Horns?
appropriate. Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
love
just
you.
thumb it up.
Is that rocking? That one. Yeah.
Keep
I'm
on
cool. I'm
rocking.
hip. I'm with it. We're
And
gonna
you can. Yeah.
yeet this
Yeah.
this episode. We're gonna yeet it.
And
That is
th-
so fresh
this is how
and
you
steep.
this is how you know that Derek is he's definitely more than qualified to be a youth pastor.
Yeah.
He's just hip with the trends, knows
Hip
what
with
the
the
kids are
trend.
up to.
Gotta grow
Yeah.
a goatee.
Yeah.
Got a tattoo. Get a leather bracelet. There's like a little meme on Facebook where it's like the youth pastor starter pack, and it had like a V-neck T-shirt and like jeans that were kind of cut up, and
Amazing.
leather bracelet,
Amazing.
tattoo,
Yeah.
goatee.
It's I would love if someone wants to buy Derek Wilson that, please,
Yeah.
look up his address, send it to St. Andrew's Church, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Duncan,
Yeah.
British Columbia.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Care of Derek Wilson. Yeah.
Converse shoes. It can't
Ooh,
be a youth
yeah.
pastor with Converse shoes. Jesus is my boo. You do you, boo. You do you, boo. Yeet. And I don't know what the other ones are. BRB.
Be right back.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like most of the lingo is based on keyboard acronyms, I assume. But
Yeah.
when I'm playing video games online and the kids are yelling at me, anything I don't understand they're saying, I assume they're just telling me I'm doing a really good job and I should keep going, and they are happy to be on my team. In a mix of their swearing and letting me know what they have done to my mother. So, and they're all like 12. Like I hear their voices. I'm like, you haven't hit puberty yet,
Amazing.
but you're better than me, so I can't even get mad.
Amazing.
Like I just
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the beginning of our episode. We went from Petra to youth pastor starter kits to
Do your mama
PlayStation
jokes on
chat, and
PlayStation.
it's just. And now for the uptake,
Yeah.
we are going to continue with our series. Not really looking at the Bible because we don't believe in it. I'm kidding. We're taking a pause and kind of going over some different things, more themes and Bible studies. So I'm going to pass it on to Tim. Tim, what are we doing this week?
Yeah, so it's good to be with you guys today. And if you survived the first kind of 5 minutes of chaos, hopefully we can bring it around for 5 minutes of pure joy, and it won't be hard to make some sort of elevation at this at this point. But we're so yeah, as Derek said, we've kind of started this new year with looking a bit more kind of thematically at some of the topics and ideas that we've been touching on. And I think I remember us trying to do something a bit more explicitly on deconstruction. It's something that kind of is very much in the mainstream right now, and there are many sides to it, as anyone will know. If you kind of wade your way into kind of any social media, you'll find the extremes of it. And so what we thought we'd do is just look a little bit about kind of how we would understand deconstruction, and maybe some of the things we see as being kind of positives and negatives of it. Maybe just giving a little bit of a sense of kind of, yeah, I guess like for me, so I'll start right into it, because otherwise it just becomes a bit weird. Is, I think I see deconstruction as kind of an essential tool that isn't about destroying something, but is about kind of looking at the foundation and framework that you find yourself in, and asking questions of, is this fit for purpose? Does this resonate with what, the meaning and purpose and value of what you have been given and are living in? Is that actually what it is? So and then you seeing it more, I think, for me, again, that sense of it's like a tool that helps me kind of navigate life. And I think there's people who would advocate for, if you're going to deconstruct, then you have to reconstruct, or you have to start with something to be able to kind of tear it down. But you don't need to, like, tear it all down and throw, as I say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a process, that can be healthily engaged with, and in faith, I think, and in constructs and conversations of faith, I think what often happens is that we don't realize how flat, our faith and our understanding of our faith is, and how entwined it all is with each other. Every piece of the puzzle has to fit in such a way, otherwise the puzzle doesn't make sense. We're actually, we're talking much more in kind of like 3D Lego structures, where like, there's building blocks on top of each other, and some of the things you might take out a brick here, but that doesn't mean the whole thing collapses. It doesn't mean you have to throw everything else out. Your understanding of God might change, but God may still be the framework that you still hang all your understanding on,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So for me, that kind of, so we just wanted to kind of, I guess, have a little bit more of a conversation around kind of, what is deconstruction for us, which I now have given a bit more for myself. What are some
Yeah.
of the positives and negatives that we see, and maybe something we'd like to say to each other, or I guess to those who are listening, about kind of what might be a good step forward, regardless of how you might shape it. So was there anything in what I said, Derek, that resonated with you? Or would you, if someone said, how do you describe or understand deconstruction, what would you do with that question?
I would say, so like when you're talking about tearing things down, the image that I got was a home renovation, right? Like you um, buy a house, and maybe you decide you want the kitchen to look a different way, or your living room to be bigger or something. And there's different processes of how much you want to take out, how much you want to redo of the house, right? So maybe you're just taking out a wall, maybe you're just repainting it, maybe you're redoing the main floor bathroom, or you're taking it all the way back to the studs. and then rebuilding it from that way. So I kind of think that's what deconstruction is. You can kind of control how far you want to go down. But anyone who's done renovation knows that once you start, it's hard to stop because you keep uncovering more rot or more things that are wrong with the existing place that you need to replace or fix, or else it's going to cause problems to what you've just redone. Like you got bad electrical, maybe all your plugs don't work or the plumbing's off or something, right? You're trying to go back and eventually you go back um, as much as you feel comfortable with or can handle. In my experience, there's been two kind of groups. Like keep in mind that me and Tim, we may have listened to some stories and done some stuff and maybe done our own kind of deconstruction of it. But there's more people who have done more extensive research in this and have done more communications, and this is just our experience. There's
This is coming
uh,
to you from the same people who were just talking, Petra and
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
so
like there's
a grain of salt, a grain of
yeah,
salt.
yeah, so like the two different ones is like I said, um the one would be, you know, deconstruction back to the studs or
Mhm.
walls or whatever you want to do. But there's some people who have taken it all the way back to the studs and said, this structure of my faith or the church just isn't going to work for what I need it or in my life. And so they just get rid of the house and start again with something else or move into a different neighborhood. And so there's two different ways, or I guess a process of it, where you can, I mean, sometimes just like, oh, realizing Jesus was a Jew, and you're like, oh, that kind of okay, that changes things, or cultural context, or maybe the world wasn't created in 6 or 7 days, um, and then you start kind of peeling away the layers, and then you keep going deeper, deeper, and realizing, maybe the construct we have from church right now isn't necessarily what was plan A for Jesus, or the the best of the best version of what it could be. And then you keep going back, and some people, um, whether theological or some kind of a traumatic experience has happened to them, or number of things, have realized that they can't fit into this um, structure of Christianity that we have fit in, and they feel more comfortable maybe being out in the like camping outside, and they enjoy the fresh air out there, or looking for something bigger, smaller, maybe something more intimate, um, and so they kind of leave the church or leave the faith, um, and I do this just because,
Sorry
um,
for those who are just listening. Derek's doing
yeah,
air
the
quotes right now.
finger air,
Yeah.
air quotes. I do this because sometimes we think that if people aren't coming to our church, they've left the faith and left Christianity, and that's not true. And so I do this. Some people have left the faith.
Yeah.
They've just realized that they've deconstructed enough that they don't hold to the
Mm,
teachings that they believe
yeah.
are the pillars of Christianity, and so they have
Yeah.
left, and that
Yeah.
happens.
Mm. I
So
think it's
does that
that's
make
an
sense?
important yeah, yeah, I think that's a really important distinction as well, and there's something I would argue for all people, is that what regardless of kind of what processes of kind of challenge, whether it's affirmation, doubt, or deconstruction that you find in your faith,
Hmm.
is work really hard to disentangle the institution and structures of the church with your understanding of who God is. Because
Hmm.
if you see them being absolutely the same, one and the same, then it will be impossible in many ways to maintain any sort of anchoring to the possibility of God and God in the world and God in your life, if if you see that being only essentially and able to be understood in the context of the institution and structures of the church.
Mm.
um and I think, as you say, like, a lot of times I think when people have stripped back, what they've realized is what they're frustrated with, or what they've had the end with, and what they struggle with is what humanity has added to who God is and
Yeah.
made essentials for God's relatedness to us and to the world.
Mm.
And then there, and as we talked about last week too, is like, sometimes you find you've created a box thinking that you've put God in it, and what you've just found is that you've put yourself in a box. And and if you don't see the two as actually being different, and there will
Mm.
always be some overlap. Like, I'm not saying the church has got it wrong. I'm not saying there aren't places of God's revelation and truth in the life of the church, because otherwise I wouldn't be in ministry, and wouldn't
Yeah.
be a priest in an institutional church. But if you cannot see that as at its best being an affirmation and a door pointing towards the God to whom we testify, if you can't see that different from the God's self whom we
Yeah.
testify to, then I think, particularly, again, I think that for a lot of people that I know of who have kind of deconstructed and walked away, quote unquote, from the faith, um, and the whole thing is what they've walked away from was the extreme construct and structure of an institution, and has often left them without any sort of understanding or ability to say, but God is still with me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they grew up being taught that, right? And that's part of
yeah,
the deconstruction is, um, what have I grown up believing was, fundamental to the faith,
mm.
um, or doxology, or not doxology. What's the word I'm thinking of? Um,
Orthodoxy.
orthodox. Um, uh, what did I believe was essential to the faith? That really was more, either my pastor leaderships or denominations, preference.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a
that
really good way.
yeah,
Yeah.
that growing up, and then experiencing different, ways of looking at the faith, or talking with different people
Mm.
who've had different experiences, and learning what they had taught up or grown up believing. Then I
Mm.
look at that myself and I go, oh, maybe I've been like a horse with those little things on the eye.
Binders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to um, to always look at what's ahead of me and keep me on the straight path. And there's a whole
Mm.
beautiful meadow or whatever,
Yeah.
streams and mountains all
Yeah.
around me that I'm just missing. The God's
Mm.
beauty all around, but I'm too busy focusing on the path right in front of me, making sure I don't stumble, that I
Yeah.
miss it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is that, like, it's a thing that we do remind ourselves of, and I think it's important to be reminded of, particularly kind of with the ongoing kind of pandemic and stages of pandemic and lockdowns and stuff that we all go through, is that it's been really easy, and this is true too with the way that we've embraced social media, not social media itself, but how we've embraced it,
Hmm.
is that we've neglected oftentimes the humans who are a part of the systems and structures. And so we start to dismiss and devalue life and devalue people, because we've agreed or bought into this very kind of flat understanding of communication and of togetherness, that
Oh,
that
okay. I get where you're going with
right,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
so like, and the same thing becomes true of faith, as you're talking about, right? Is like we hit these moments where like we flattened, or try to flatten those kind of experiences of God,
mhm,
into those things that, as you say, are actually preferences. So like there's people who their preference is to meet with God in nature, and that resonates with who they are and things. There's some of that
mhm,
that I recognize, and then there's other stuff that I'm just like, yeah, no, it just doesn't do anything for me, right? and
mhm,
and then when we start to push them as one being more true, or one being more authentic, or one being more godly than something else,
yeah,
we really quickly start to put up those blinders that at one point are just preferences that then very quickly become prejudices, right?
yeah, yeah. Like when I growing up, even throughout Bible college and stuff, I found myself in different churches or events or something like that where the only sign that God showed up and did anything was healings and words of wisdom. If you don't know what words of
Mm,
wisdom are, it's when the pastor goes up and is like, almost prophesying over someone, like, "Oh, you're gonna go and do great
mm,
things for God. God wants to bless you," almost like a psychic
mm,
kind of thing.
mm,
But that was the bar of
mm.
seeing how God worked, and that was the bar for how you were to live. Um,
Yeah.
like your neighbor, pray for the healing. You know, tell them all the stuff that they've done or something like that. But nothing
Mm,
about, hey, if they're having struggle paying rent, help them out with rent or help them groceries, or if you're having a meal,
mm.
invite them over. Like there was nothing of
Yeah.
the tangible
Mm,
with the relationships with everyone. It was
yeah.
always the supernatural.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a big difference between the two. Whereas now
Yeah.
I don't think that there's that big of a divide between the two.
Mm,
Um, so things like that, where you even in the pandemic, like I know our church, we this church has been around for I don't know 50, 60 years or something like that. Um, and so it's been done a certain way with minor adjustments. Maybe we'll do three songs instead of two. Maybe we'll play piano or something like that.
mm,
Different things like that. Get a new sound system. But then when COVID hit and we weren't able to meet together, we as a church had to go through a type of deconstruction. We are like, okay, what is
yeah.
the church about?
Mm.
What are
That's
we
good.
doing? What's the essentials of the church that we can be
Mm,
doing outside of the church building? Is
yeah.
the church building, and is church just when we meet Sunday mornings, or are
Mm,
is the church the individuals, and are they able to go and be the church outside of the the building? And so, I mean, we failed in a lot of ways, but it was a type of deconstruction where we had to look at, like, what are our core beliefs, what the church is, and have we allowed tradition or obligation um, define or move what we know the church to be in a different direction that maybe it hasn't been. There's a book. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about kind of um, the different traditions the church has that has been taken from pagan um,
mm,
religions, like Christmas
okay.
trees and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And they start the book off with this kind of story where there's this cow that walks this one path every day and is going weaving in and out of rocks and up and down, and it's not a straight line at all. It's just going
Mm,
all around. And the cows walk this a couple of times, um, or what, once a day for a while, and then people start walking on it, and then eventually chariots or horses and buggies are going on it, and horses and all this kind of stuff, and then they pave a road on it, and it's been there for thousands of years. This crazy windy all around road,
mm,
just because no one stopped to think, well, is this actually the right way that it's supposed to go? Like, is this the
mm,
quickest way from point A to point B? It's just they kept following what was before them, and as soon it became tradition, and then it became
yeah.
imprinted in the ground, and that's what the
Mm,
road was. And
yeah.
so many things in the church we have done for years and years and years,
Mm,
and even we justified it, and we can say this is
Yeah.
why we do it, how we do it for these reasons, but we're
Mm.
not stopping to actually think, well, is there a better way to do this?
Yeah.
Is this what we're
Yeah.
supposed to do?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
like,
yeah, and yeah, because I think you're absolutely right. Because I remember when like growing up, I didn't realize it at the time, but there was like this immense pressure of the return of Jesus and
uh,
us needing to be ready for it, and
uh,
that being that the absolute moment where all choices are kind of same as with your death, right? It's like where it's all or nothing. This is heaven or hell, and it's all based upon this. But once Jesus comes, that's it. There's no other option. Like there's no other chance for people.
yeah,
And so there was like this huge pressure, and all discipleship in the churches I grew up in was about teaching people how to take somebody from the point of recognizing that they needed to answer this question, and here's the way they should answer it so that they can go to
uh,
heaven, and then to teach that person to do the same thing to the next person they met. And it came from this really this strong good intentions of like, if you think somebody's going to burn eternally in eternal
yeah,
conscious torment, you don't want them to be there, and that's a genuinely good thing.
yeah,
But then the way that flattened what discipleship was, that flattened what relationships were, that imposed on people this sense of like, yeah, kind of, and actually led into,
well,
then we
yeah,
also
there,
need to know who God is in that.
yeah,
Then we started, as you say, we looked at it and it was just like, but of course this is what we've been doing, this is the right thing to do.
yeah,
And you couldn't question that, you couldn't doubt it, you couldn't ask questions about it, because it was so obviously right because of the path everyone had
yeah,
been on before that. And to
yeah,
actually ask that question about, is there more to life than just asking a question that seems to give the church power over people here on earth?
yeah.
Maybe there's something to be uncovered there, right?
Mhm. Well, like mentorship and stuff has turned relationships into a goal or a prize that you need to win,
Mm.
or it has to have some kind of purpose instead
Yeah,
of just being knowing someone for who they are.
yeah. Mm.
Watching Canto, that Disney movie, it is unreal, people, and like the premise of it is, you're not your value isn't found in what you do and your gifts, and what you present. Your value is just you being you. You are the gift, like that meme. I arrived. I am the gift. You are the gift. Um, and
Derek's been
so,
waiting his whole life to be
yeah,
told,
yeah,
you are the
I
gift. Yeah.
am the gift. Yeah,
Mm.
but like, I think we should probably maybe do some examples of maybe some things that we've deconstructed in our life, because I don't really like when podcasts and people like talk about a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, just tell me,
Mm.
give me an example to set me on the road. Like right now,
Mm.
well, no, okay, before we get to right now, like I relooked at creation. I think that's a pretty
Mhm.
um, uh, first start for people, and 6 days looking at different views of what creation was. Was it created in six
Mm.
days, or it's kind of a poem written. The
Mm.
first 3 days are kind of the setup, and then the next 3 days are filling up the things. Just kind of questioning
Mm.
things, like seeing what other people have brought up and questioned, and
Mm.
kind of looking at it. Like I did a course a couple summers ago, and it wasn't even on Genesis or anything, but the teacher was like, "Have you ever read the beginning of Genesis? Like we always talk about ex nihilo, God created,
Mm.
uh, the earth out of
Out of
nothing."
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then you read it, and it said the Spirit came down and hovered over the waters,
Mm.
or hovered over the chaos. So there was waters and
Mm.
chaos before creation. Like there was something there before, but like I never sat and thought about that. It's just always been
Mm.
God created out of nothing, right? Or like how does that work in with what I'm reading in the Bible? Um,
Yeah.
or and even looking at was that Ricky Watts when he did that course in Aston, about the Genesis, and just looking at the
Didn't
different
have that one.
gods of of the Egyptians, Amon-Ra, and that
Mm,
kind of stuff, and how that ties into it, and it's more of
mhm,
a picture and stuff. Just being free to look at different ways of looking things. Like right now, I'm going through a podcast with some friends, the After Class podcast, and they're going through different atonement theories because, believe it or
mm,
not, there's not just one. Um, and even the way we get into it, um, how we understand the atonement theory, like wrath of God. Well, the wrath of God in the death of Jesus doesn't exist. Which I say in the songs and stuff. I'm like, what do you mean? It's got to be in there. It's not. Um, and different things that once you take the time to actually sit down and look at it
mm,
and listen to other people, because I can stare at a Bible verse for a week and not get anything new out of it. But then when someone mentions to me something that stuck out to them, then it gets
mm,
my wheels turning.
yeah.
And so we're looking at different atonement theories. What actually happened on the cross? What was done there? What does the Bible say? What does different
Mm,
traditions say? And looking at everything. And that's the process that got me kind of beginning my deconstruction. Um, is just taking down, the drywall of creation and looking what's beneath it. And maybe there's something more beautiful that helps me understand and see the Bible in a different light.
yeah.
Maybe,
Mm,
maybe the story of
mm,
Jonah isn't literal, and it's more of a story that's speaking truth into a situation. You're like, oh, okay.
mm,
Well, this actually opens up to a lot more things, and I can see myself in that more. Maybe, maybe this didn't really happen, but the writers are trying to show something much bigger
mm,
in the gospel accounts, and so they've
mm,
written this in their perception, or to they remembered it years later this kind
mm,
of way, and that's why there's the differences.
mm.
But just different stuff like that. Like there's lots of resources online. If you have any questions, talk to me and Tim. We can lead you in the right direction. But there's lots of different things,
Or lead you in the wrong direction,
or
depending
lead you
on
in the
what.
wrong
Yeah,
direction
yeah,
depending who you
yeah.
talk to. But there's not, like, I don't think there's any. People are always afraid because like people growing up, it was don't doubt because it'll make
Mm,
you a not a Christian, right? If you doubt it.
yeah. It's the opposite of
But
faith. Yeah,
that's not true. Like it's
yeah,
you doubt
definitely not
it
true.
and then you find it. It's if you doubt it, you're going to walk away with what I believe being a Christian is, and that those are two very different things. Walking away from
Yes,
your faith and
absolutely.
walking away from what people think you is a Christian.
Yeah,
Because guess what? There's lots of different ways that people think being a Christian
mm,
is, and your way
yeah.
is probably not right. To be honest with you. Uh,
I think that's the thing is it. I think we have to get away from the language of right and
yeah,
wrong too,
yeah,
right? Like, and we need to we need to get away from the language of right and wrong, right?
right,
Yeah, but
wrong.
it's just like, we need to get away from that language because it's not. It isn't like God is actually, or at least I believe God is actually so big and so amazing and so beyond our comprehension and understanding
Mhm,
that even when we get something right or correct, it's still in a framework of unknowing,
mm,
and that's not a bad thing because that's how we experience life with people. And if someone who is finite with us on this world is also unknowable, how much more the infinite God of the universe, who somehow called and created the reality itself and has been present to us in the fullness of life from the beginning of whatever it might have been till the end of whenever things might come together again. Like, if God is not somehow bigger than that, and can be both found in those beautiful truthful affirmations, while also seeing that those are barely scratching the surface of what may be correct. Like, if we can't get away from that, then I think we will always need to throw God out with our understanding and beliefs of God and the church.
mm,
um yeah.
mhm. Yeah, that's part of the deconstruction is realizing the different views of God and interpretation of Scripture, how much it's changed over the years, and realizing how people have interpreted it different ways, um, and some I agree with it and some I don't, and then how they've also viewed God differently and not differently. Um, it's
But
simply amazing. Like this,
yeah, yeah,
what we believe now is way different than what it was before. Even the world wars have changed the way Christianity has viewed
yeah,
life and death and
yeah, absolutely.
the the um, the goodness of God
Mm.
and the progress of humanity towards something. And this pandemic will change it, and different things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's world events have, and
Yeah,
as we learn more about science and things like that, everything is changing, and that's how we go.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Copernicus, I think that's the guy who thought, who was like, "Hey, guess what? The the sun doesn't go around the Earth. Um, we actually go
yeah,
around the sun."
yeah,
And then they killed him for it.
yeah.
Um, we're
Good
learning
call.
different ways, and
Good call.
that's, but like that was the way they understood the Bible,
Yeah.
and someone challenged
Mm.
that, and they killed him for it.
Mm.
But then they found out that his way was actually correct,
Yeah.
and instead of them sitting down and thinking, well, is this actually is that important to the Bible? Like, does the Bible really change if this guy believes this, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not? Like, does that change? If not, then why? Then yeah, sure,
Mm.
believe whatever you want. Um, we can debate it or whatever, but I'm not going to kill you over it. How many things have we, gone fighting with or argued or banish people for thinking a different way of the Bible, where it's like, well, is that really central to the gospel? Is this just a different way of looking at it? Can we work together on it?
Yeah. And I would say, I'll end with this and then come back. I promise to come back next week with a few more kind of concrete, maybe looking at a couple more specific concrete examples to carry the conversation on. But what I'd like to end with is that one of the things I grew up with, which I think is absolutely true, is that if at the heart of, of the gospel is the person of God revealed in Jesus Christ, still at work through God's Holy Spirit, testifying to the Father who loves us and wants to draw near to us, that we might know life and know it in its fullness, then we need to also be humble enough to come to that person to
Yeah.
say, who are you in this? Where are you in this? What are you doing in this? Because it's the same thing. If I come to you and, like, instead of having these conversations with you, I just put you on mute and people can see you, and I'm just like, and Derek believes, and Derek says this, and Derek does
And
this,
Derek's wrong
like,
because,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, without inviting you actually in to be the person. Like, there's
yeah,
a lot of things I could tell people and they would be true about you and who you are and the life that we shared together and our experiences that we have and things like
uh-huh.
that. But what's more valuable and beneficial is to actually share that relationship and those testimonies with you as the person you are. And
Yeah,
if we can't do that with God, then I don't, for me, that's the purpose. That's the purpose of faith. That's the purpose of the scriptures. That's the purpose of our wrestling, our deconstruction, our doubting, our affirmations. All of that purpose is that we create spaces where we stop long enough to say, God, who are you? Where are you? And what are you doing in the world?
yeah,
And it might be
100%.
through Petra. It might be through
Right through
Petra,
Petra. Yes,
or
unseen
there's
power.
this.
It's through the
Yeah.
unseen power. It's either
Excellent. Well,
Petra
yeah,
or Carmen. I'm not sure
yeah, yeah.
which one.
Well, definitely, I think definitely more Carmen.
Yeah,
Definitely,
the
much
champion,
more. Yeah, yeah.
the
Great. Well,
hands that knew
let's
no
come. Let's
sin.
let's come back with a couple more. If you guys have something specific that
Yeah.
you think you're like, online or in church, people are talking about this, it doesn't feel comfortable, or I wonder if there's a different way to present or talk about this idea about faith and God. Bring those forward. We'd love to talk about those,
Yeah.
but in the absence of those, we will also continue to bring specifics, as Derek has challenged us to.
Yes.
Next week, we'll look at some specifics on kind of what this means, how it looks, and what where God is in it.
Yeah.
Because God is in it. I believe it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, man,
Sounds good. Blessings, y'all. Toodles.
peace.
Peace. Peace and love. That's what Tim used to tell me in Bible school all the time. Peace and love. Spelled peace like piece of pie, and love, LUB, because he was so cool. All right, bye.